Now we are recording. Now we are ready.
All right. Party on, guys.
Party on, Sal. Party on, Blake.
Party on.
Rock on. Well, welcome back, podcasters, to another episode of the Party On Johncast, the most excellent podcast that deals with music, theology, coffee, or other beverages, and just all-around righteous topics from a Reformed and Wesleyan perspective. Figure I'll change up the intro a little bit. I'm Reverend Sal, Sir Marco, a ordained teaching elder in the Presbyterian Church USA, in the validated ministry of hospice chaplaincy. Validate me, please.
Always needing that validation. I don't know, Blake. You look like a very validating dad to your daughter, but Sal just seems like he was deprived his whole life of it, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
Anyway, and that's why he was a glutton for punishment.
So,
What's that?
he is from New Jersey. I mean, you are too.
We're both from New Jersey, and he did decide to go into a ministry that has to validate him.
Exactly. So that's my identity.
Anyway. Well, I am the Rockin' Reverend Todd Laddick, serving in, I'm an ordained elder in the United Methodist Church of Greater New Jersey, serving a congregation in Newton, New Jersey, and just happy to be here, guys.
And I'm the Viking Vicar, Reverend Blake Severson, pastor in Presbyterian USA Church in Rock Island, Illinois. And as you can all see, a proud new father of a little one who is here with us today and will be for some time.
Very nice. Congratulations. It's good to have that special guest with us.
That special guest is pretty rockin', and I want to give a shout out right now to Lauren, and I believe his name is Josh, and if I'm wrong, he'll correct me when I see him again. But Lauren and Josh, I've met at Angry Eric, a place that our listeners should be definitely familiar with. And a while ago, I met them. They're teachers, and they heard that we had a podcast. I think it was right around the time we had recorded at Angry Eric, and they had, I don't know if they were there that night or we were talking about it, but they were interested and evidently subscribed to our podcast and listened to it. So rock on, guys. Shout out to you, Lauren and Josh, if I'm right. I'm terrible with names, but they know that. So shout out to you guys. Thank you for listening, and thank you to all of our listeners for listening. You guys rock. Our podcasters are the best. Literally.
They are. Very much.
So I guess that brings us into our Hebrews segment.
And how do you know that God likes coffee?
How so?
Because he had someone write about it in the book of Hebrews.
Well, you guess you need an instruction manual for brewing coffee if you've not done it before.
You do. Yeah. You do. Especially since they didn't have Keurig machines back then.
Yes. Keurig machine was non-existent. So I guess which one of us wants to go first? I can, since I'm drinking the most boring thing out of us.
Sure.
But I love it. It's not boring to me. I am drinking. I gotta do this. I am drinking what is known as Poland Springs sparkling water, and this is the pomegranate lemonade. And it is one of my favorite flavors. Actually, I prefer this, or I prefer Simply Bubbles, like no flavor. So,
very nice. Cheers. And I, the angel of death, am drinking Tim Hortons medium roast. Just my go-to. My go-to Timmy's when it's not Dunkin' or Starbucks. So,
Yes.
and in my coffee talk mug, which was gifted to me because my coffee talks are back on again.
Yay! And I'm gonna have to drink something in a mug next time. It's been a while. I got a cool mug of the Mandalorian holding up Grogu. It's really cool. So, what are you drinking? You're drinking.
This is coffee from one of my favorite cups. Mountains are calling because these are. And it's Kicking Horse coffee from Canada.
Okay.
Highly recommend it. Hey, do you not like me talking? Is that what this is? Yeah.
Pay attention to me, Daddy. Pay attention to me.
I was gonna say it's a little early for the baby to have coffee, but
Yeah, right.
Give me some.
Yeah, so this is my third double shot of the day. This time by choice, though, because this is 2 nights in a row now that she slept about 7 hours straight. So we're knock on all the wood in the universe, maybe turning a corner on that.
Wow, yeah, that's good. That's an update right there. That's
good stuff.
Yeah, cool.
Well,
Kicking Horse, I highly recommend to anybody looking for some good coffee. They ship from Canada. You can get it for really about the same price as you would from Starbucks. They're a really great company based out of Alberta, and just I can't speak highly enough about their coffee. It's really good.
I'll have to check them out. Kicking Horse.
So if you want a non-chain coffee from Canada like Tim Hortons, go with the Kicking Horse.
Yes. Tim Hortons is also consequently from Canada, right?
Mm.
Hey, here's the Canadian coffee.
Yeah, Wildling Coffee. Here we are.
This is the Brews Segment Canadian Coffee edition.
Yeah,
and Poland Springs, consequently, is American, but it is up in Maine, which is right there next to Canada. So, we're Canada edition today, or northern states.
Those Maine springs may be fed from Canada. You never know.
Yeah. Then again, Indiana is pretty up there too.
Basically, South Newfoundland, isn't it?
Yes.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So that brings us into our most excellent music segment. Okay, how did the baby react to that?
Good. I just kept
baby
staring.
reaction edition.
So far, so good.
Cool. Okay.
Most excellent music edition, baby metal edition. There you
baby
go.
metal edition.
Baby metal is good.
I may come up with a kids bop metal edition. That would be cool. I'd have to get kids though. That's
Have you guys heard of baby metal? Do you know that baby metal's a thing?
Yeah,
is baby metal a thing?
It is a thing.
It is a thing in Japan.
Yeah. It's it's was it 2 or 3 Japanese
Maybe
women?
Einstein, but metal.
J-pop stars, girls that were loaded up in front of one of a pretty intense metal band. Like they're real good.
Wow. How old
they
are
sing combo J-pop death metal, and it's compelling. It's very good.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if you've seen, they're what 20s or 30s, but they're dressed up sort of in the JK pop anime like baby doll type outfits, but then they're
baby metal,
and they're singing basically J-pop music, but supported by a really good intense metal band.
Cool. Well, I'm never against that. Adding metal to anything is cool. Adding metal to anything improves whatever you're adding it to.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. So what are you all listening to? Baby metal, I take it, is not what you're listening to, but it could be. Wow. Don't all speak at once.
I'll go since Blake is attending too. I've been listening to and kind of spurred on by Todd because Todd reminded me the other day of a very good thrash metal documentary on Amazon Prime. I think
Yes.
it's called Thrashing or Get Thrashed, or
It's
I
Get
forget the name of
Thrashed.
it.
Yeah.
It's
Get
Thrashed. And one of the people interviewed is Bobby Blitz, the singer from Overkill, who were an influential part of the East Coast, New York City, Jersey thrash scene. They're the big. Really think they should be part of the, included in the big four and be the big fifth. But anyway.
They are the big fifth. They just never get included in that list. Yeah.
Yep.
Because there's no other bigger band out there that I can think of that had more influence on the thrash metal scene other than the big four than Overkill. I mean, it's just they're up there. Yep.
Yeah. So went back to and they're great. They're awesome. So I think their best album, if not one of their best albums, which came out in '97, the same year I graduated high school. Kind of it was after the peak of thrash metal, and thrash really wasn't a big scene. Is their album From the Underground and Below. It's just the whole album is great. And it actually has a song called Promises, which is almost, considering Overkill, it's almost a ballad.
Yeah.
That's a great song. I actually used it in CPE. But the song I'm going to talk about, and it kind of goes with one of our themes today, is the song I'm All Right by Overkill. That says, "Oh my God, in blood-soaked silhouette. Oh my God, at the end of a bayonet. Oh my God, put wings on the rhetoric. Oh my God, I'm all right. No pity, salvation, or need. No more on the way. No pity, toleration, or greed. This is where I lay. Yeah, I'm all right, and I need to know when I'm dead and gone, where do I go? Jesus Christ in sun-baked misery. Jesus Christ in sun-drenched agony. Oh my God, why have you forsaken me? Oh my God, now who's taking care of me? No pity, salvation, or need. No more on the way. No pity, toleration, or greed. This is where I lay. Yeah, I'm all right. And I need to know when I'm dead and gone, where do I go?" So, and if you know, ironically, Bobby, his mother, was in the choir with my aunt. My aunt is still the organist at Catholic Church up in Suffern, New York, right across the border from Jersey. And his mom was one of her star singers in the choir. So I don't think that singing talent really passed on to Bobby. Sorry. But so he was raised Catholic. So he has an understanding of theology and God. But I don't know. That kind of song kind of makes me think about we pastors and clergy like to say we're okay, but we're not. So, especially after next month will be 2 years of this pandemic. So, but we'll get into that topic in a little bit.
Yeah, and that reminds me of what I've been listening to. Well, yes, I was watching Get Thrashed, and it is a really great documentary on Prime. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's definitely it's an hour and 40 minutes of just like the history you need to know about thrash metal and the influence that the thrash metal has had on all other subsequent metal metal subgenres that throughout time. Metal prior to thrash was more poppy and glitzy and more like like what you'd expect to see out of a metal band in the 70s. Even Black Sabbath started off very like metal, and then they kind of lost their way a little bit and didn't really contribute, in my opinion, in the later years as much as they did in the earlier years. But when you get into like bands like obviously Metallica and Megadeth and Slayer and Anthrax and Overkill, I mean, these were bands that just paved the way for a more brutal, more real, more raw type of metal that just influenced all metal. It really set the direction of metal from that point on. And so I've been listening to a lot of Slayer. I've been listening to a lot of Megadeth. I love Megadeth, and truth be told, just truth be told, Metallica rightfully gets a lot of credit for what they did, but a lot. Here's the dirty secret. It's not really a dirty secret. It's well known. But without Dave Mustaine, it's unlikely Metallica would have got where they got. You know, like Dave Mustaine was the driving, like I mean, he wasn't the driving force behind Metallica, but when it comes to those sick riffs and just the level of attack that he and he alone is talented enough to do,
Yeah. And
he was unreal.
they even mentioned that in the documentary how much influence he had on their songwriting and songwriting
even
of
Metallica
all
admits
thrash.
it. Yeah, even Metallica
He
admits
just
it.
had,
Of course. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Sal.
he just had that substance abuse issue. So
He did. He was super talented on guitar. Super talented guitarist, super talented songwriter. Had an understanding. I mean, you think of songs like "Creeping Death," which are theologically motivated. Well, guess who was a co-writer on that? You know, it was Dave Mustaine. And so when he got kicked out, I mean, it's well documented the feud he had with Metallica, and he formed Megadeth as a blood revenge against Metallica, but created one of, if not the greatest, in my opinion, thrash metal band of all times because of just what they were able to do. And they never, unlike Metallica, never sold out ever. like Slayer, Megadeth, Overkill, those guys, Anthrax even never sold out. But Metallica, they shaved their heads. They wore polyester for years and were doing a load and reload and Saint Anger of crap. And then all of a sudden decided to get back into it with Death Magnetic. Thank you, Jesus. But Megadeth never had that. They never had that off-road stint. And so I'm going to read. I've been listening a lot to Rust in Peace, which is everybody knows Peace Sells, but who's buying? Everybody knows Countdown to Extinction. Rust in Peace is a great album. It was a very successful album when it came out, but got overshadowed, I think, by some other albums. And the one I'm going to read is Poison Was the Cure, because while it seems like this song is written about a relationship, it could really be about any relationship. It doesn't have to be a romantic one. So I really like the lyrics. I missed the warm embrace I felt. First time you, hold on one second. This is playing. I missed the warm embrace I felt. First time you touched me, secure and safe in open arms. I should have known you'd crush me. A snake you were when we met. I loved you anyway, pulling out your poison fangs. The venom never goes away. Serpent swims free in my blood, dragon sleeping in my veins, jackal speaking with my tongue, roach egg laying in my brain, stalked beneath your shadows. And here it goes playing again, sorry. Hold on one second. I'm reading it off of Apple Music, which is the problem. Yeah, so the venom never goes away. Serpent swims free in my blood. Dragon sleeping in my vein. Jackal speaking with my tongue. Roach egg laying in my brain. Stalked beneath your shadows. Sleepwalking to the gallows. I'm the sun that beats your brow in until I finally threw the towel in, never knowing if I'd wake up in a whirlpool. Got redundant. My brain was just some driftwood in a cesspool. I became dead. From a rock star to a desk fool was my destiny, someone said. Life's a tide pool, taste the waters. Life's abundant, taste me. And I what I love about that song is it's a guy who's clearly grieving the loss of some sort of relationship. We've all been there. I love your background, by the way. Sal.
Yep, that's Charlie from Overkill.
Yep, yep. So so I love the fact that that it's dealing with that, but then at the same time, the self-doubt that comes in, what other people tell you, you're gonna go from a rock star to a desk guy, like it's just so raw, so real. That's what I love about Mustaine is the brutal honesty of his lyrics. And I could have read more traditional Megadeth stuff, like Rust in Peace itself is about nuclear warfare and the government's just having way too much control. But I thought I'd read one a little more personal to Mustaine. So that's me.
We have been listening to a lot of Encanto because Ada loves it. She
It
just
is
thinks
the hot rage right now.
it is the best thing ever. But we also, she's a big fan of Sing. Hey, do you want to speak? So she loved the movie Sing, which is like the animals having a song, like an American Idol competition. And so Sing 2 came out, and so we kind of did that as, I think it was last weekend or the weekend before, kind of as a family thing to finally watch that movie. And so it's not music that I've listened to before, honestly, but it's something I want to start digging into a little more. Is U2, because Sing 2 is really just a vehicle for Bono songs, so that they could get him to be the big inclusive star in the movie. And so there's just I'm sure the deal was like, Bono, we want you to play this part. He's like, fine. How many U2 songs can we get into this movie? And the answer was quite a few. But it just
which movie is this again?
What's that?
Is this Encanto, or are we talking about a different movie?
Sing 2.
Sing 2. Right. Sing 2. Okay. I was gonna say, I don't recall Bono being in Encanto, but I could have missed that.
Yeah, real subtle part. No, so Sing 2 has some really great music, and it's a lot of fun, and it's got what I think is a really good story. But hearing the words of U2 songs, which we've all heard a million times, but kind of phrased like that made me think I really need to dig into this band more, because I like it when I hear it, but I'm not seeking it out. And so one of the things I'm intending to do is to dig more deeply into it, because still haven't found what I'm looking for is a really deep theological song. I've heard those lyrics a million times, but when sitting watching this movie, they kind of struck me for the first time. This
Bono's a great songwriter.
This recognition in that song of him knowing who Jesus is, but then the chorus coming in, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for, is a really important theme in the Christian life, right? We know these things, we know the stories, but we're not done looking. There's still some hunger out there that is calling us into something different.
Absolutely. I'm getting goosebumps as you talk about this. Absolutely.
And I think also what I see in that is that it's not a bad thing. It's a natural thing, right? I find fulfillment in Jesus, but I also find a lot of fulfillment in these mountains that I like to go climb, and the things that make me who I am. And as I was listening to it, as we were watching this movie, one, just enjoying it, but also thinking how many people's natural passions and abilities have been discounted because it wasn't dressed in Jesus, right? And what have we missed in the church because it's not the package we're used to. And this fulfillment isn't coming because we're not including people's love for the mountains or for metal music or knitting or whatever it is, right? You name it. We've kind of said, well, if you don't make it explicitly Christian, then it doesn't count. And so that's kind of what I've been thinking about. So I'm looking forward to seeing how much more of that is in their music, because I'm sure it's ever.
It is. Listening, U2, I've always had a tremendous respect for U2, and I do like their music when I hear it, but I am a lot like you, Blake, in that I don't necessarily seek it out. If it's on, I appreciate it. But in what I have heard of U2, and I've heard a decent amount of their stuff, they religion and faith and the human struggle are very much themes throughout their music.
Not too long before his passing, I know that Bono did some work with Eugene Peterson around the music of the Psalms.
Yes.
I can't remember which song it is, but there is a U2 song that I think they did base on a psalm. So, and I think Bono's been pretty open about how faith has influenced his.
He's a Christian. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, he's a Christian. He has Christian faith. So, and it does influence his songwriting. There's no doubt about it. And like you said, I think I still haven't found what I'm looking for is the pinnacle of that. It just is the human experience when it comes to faith, and the human experience in general. I think even take God and religion aside, we search and search and search, and we still haven't found what we're looking for, period. It's universal. Is his music reaches spiritual levels, but they're delivered in universal ways.
Mhm.
Yeah, which is I think is what's great about Bono actually. And people accept it. They know who he is. They know what he believes, and they accept it. And they find what they connect to that music in the way that it connects to them. And I think that's that's the way Jesus did it, right? Like he met people where they were.
Mhm.
He didn't make them come up to where he was. And
Well,
so
I think it was Calvin, because I'm Presbyterian, so I had to bring in Calvin.
sure, you got to bring in
But,
Calvin.
whatever is good, whatever is beautiful, whatever is true, there is God also. And he was talking about this ability to accept, to look at the Stoic philosophers, or to look at Socrates, or, any of these, ancient people that weren't speaking specifically Christianese, and saying, is there truth in that?
Right.
That's a part of God's truth working its way out through history. And I
People
think
don't realize how much Plato had how much
Yeah.
Socrates and Plato had an effect on Christian theology, in Western Christian theology. Absolute major influence.
And you see, one of the, condemnations I've heard from atheists is, well, these stories are in every religion. I'm like, right. Think about how insane that is.
You're right, and you're actually proving my point.
Yeah.
These thoughts were naturally arising in human beings throughout the ages and throughout the globe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
We can focus on the differences, but the similarities are just absolutely mind blowing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
To not get too much into Mr. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it was aliens. The fact that these cultures, these cultures and these religions from around the world have these similar thoughts and stories, and it's that natural theology coming out. And I think Calvin was probably getting that from Philippians: whatever's right, just whatever's true, whatever's good, do those things.
That's right out of Philippians.
Yeah. So
sometimes Calvin and Wesley, they just quoted scripture, like it's just but
what does Wesley say? Do all the good you can wherever you can.
Yeah.
Which I guess this brings us into our main segment, which I haven't even come up with a name for this episode yet, so if that presents itself, it will. But I guess we can talk about, I think the two tie together, but they do so differently. We can talk about, there's been an awful lot of celebrity deaths this year in particular, or at least maybe it's the same amount as always, but it just seems like one after another you're hearing somebody died. And I was, just to give a little backstory as to why I thought this would be a good thing to talk about, I was really, really floored. Obviously when Betty White died, but you knew Betty White almost 100. Her time was borrowed at that point. It was, but when I heard that Bob Saget died, I mean, I grew up watching Bob Saget. I mean, he was one of America's TV dads. Probably one of the more wholesome ones that didn't end up in jail, for drugging people or something else like that. He was just and yet, I followed his stand-up as well, and he broke that mold of being Danny Tanner and was quite vulgar and could make even some of the most vulgar comedians blush. He was in life just a really, from what you can tell from all accounts across the board, was just a really decent human being who you really wanted to get to know. And whether he was being dirty and vulgar on stage or being adorable and funny in a family-friendly kind of way on Full House or America's Funniest Home Videos, where he was just zany, he really had an impact on people's lives. And I found myself truly grieving his loss, crying at points. That was the weirdest thing. It's like, I don't even really know this guy. I mean, I knew him in a way, but I didn't really know him. And I was thinking, how celebrity deaths really do impact us, how the grief is real, and yet at the same time kind of surreal, not entirely reality. And so I thought that would be a neat conversation. And then we can also talk about self-care, because that's something we should always be talking about. Quite frankly, I don't think any of us on this earth do self-care quite well. We'd be a better place if we did. So
I don't, as a hospice chaplain and a chaplain in general, when there's this influx of celebrity deaths in, December, January, beginning of the year, I'm not surprised, because I noticed that pattern anyway, because of just death happens to peak where it's more noticeable. But yeah, you had Louis Anderson, you had Meatloaf, you had Betty White, you had Sidney Poitier, you had Bob Saget. Bob Saget and Louis Anderson, both comedians who, Louis Anderson had his own cartoon back in the 90s or early 2000s, influenced our generation, the next younger generation, without knowing it. I think that's probably why they feel so raw, is because they were such, at least for Bob Saget, he was a big part of our generation's childhood. And he was only 65. Like 65, when you're 20, 65 seems ancient, but it's not ancient. It's 65 is young. So I think because they are in such public forums, it feels like Todd said, you feel like you know them.
Yeah, I think as I'm listening to you guys talk, one of the things I'm thinking about here is the connection is, at least as I see it, is these people are our self-care. Right? I mean, we consume media instead of feeling our feelings most of the time. Right? We go to our favorite musicians, we go to watch our favorite comedies, or watch this show that we love, right? To escape, to kind of, that's our self-care. I mean, that's what we do at the end of the day, is we're watching New Girl right now. We're watching back through that. It's just, there's something about that the media we consume becomes a part of our self-care routine. And when that leaves, we feel it deeply. These people that we've kind of entrusted our own well-being to, and who have taken that mantle, right? Have taken the mantle of being public that provide this service. They really do provide a service in a lot of ways, especially when it's done well. I think about,
doesn't New Girl have that funny bearded guy, the comedian? I can't think of his name. He's got the fuzzy beard. He's kind of overweight, bald with some fuzzy hair, stringy. Anyway, I saw my daughter watching it, and maybe he was just in one scene and isn't in the show as a whole. But the comedian was one of the guys that roasted Bob Saget on Comedy Central. Just saying. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, but I think about the celebrity death. I think that probably hit me the hardest, and it hasn't been one of the most recent ones. But I remember clearly the day Chris Cornell died.
Oh yes, Chris Cornell. That was rough. That was rough.
In part because of the way that he shared his journey with depression in his music, and so we knew what he was going through. And then to find out that he lost it, he lost the battle, was just
he lost the battle. Yep, he lost the battle.
I mean, I'm tearing up thinking about it right now. Like that one hammered.
That was rough, and it was unseen because you knew his struggle was so public, and he had seemingly conquered it, and was like kind of something, like you kind of looked to him like, well, if he can get by this, I can get by this, and then bam, it's like, oh no, he didn't survive it at all.
Yeah, but you think about the songs he wrote with Soundgarden and the songs he wrote with Audioslave. I mean, those are some really beautiful, deep, and touching songs, and to see the perspective of the way that he died makes them different, and I personally, I would go to Soundgarden and Audioslave a lot when I needed to feel my feelings.
I did too. Yep.
For him to depart was
I
really
did too.
difficult.
And actually, similarly, I did the same with Stone Temple Pilots, and I did the same with Nirvana back when they, I still do with Nirvana here and there. But obviously, he died so many years ago that everybody just knows that it's not a shock anymore. But I remember when that happened distinctly, and seeing the body being brought out in a stretcher, and it was just like, oh. And at that time, I was suicidal. I was feeling suicidal myself. I listened to that music because it spoke to me. I related with it, and yeah. But Soundgarden was that Chris Cornell was tough. Yeah. At least with Bob Saget. I mean, as much as that shocked me, and I did grieve it because that's a part of my childhood. As much as that shocked me, at least he died doing what he loved doing, and it was a natural cause event. It was not like he was drugged or strung out. It wasn't like he committed suicide or he died. It happens. Yeah, it sucks, but Cornell, that has a whole different level of suck on it.
Yeah. I think for comedians too, it's maybe more upsetting because they, like you said, like that's what we go to for self-care. And I know having heard enough comedians interviewed on radio show I listen to, comedy for them is their self-care because, like every human being, they're broken in some way. And, comedy is that outlet that allows.
They're broken more than most.
Yeah. So comedy for them is their therapy, and they actually get their care and their energy and their high from making people laugh. Getting people to a better place. So I think that's probably what with Louis Anderson and Betty White and Bob Saget is these are people who we feel so connected to because they made us forget our own hurts or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of times, you think about the character that Bob Saget played on Full House, and he was a single dad at a time where single dads were unheard of, right? He's a single dad who was living with two other guys, his brother-in-law and his good friend, who were trying to raise a family together. This was like Full House was so ahead of its time at the time when you think about it, and yet people just accepted it because of how endearing it was. I mean, there, it just, I think it maybe not for everybody, and this is maybe we can talk about the race in here as well. As a white kid growing up in suburbia, Full House was like one of the things that I could really relate to, not because I lived in a situation similar to theirs, but just because the life circumstances that happened in the show were just similar to, middle class white kids' experience. If I were growing up in the, urban city, I might still like Full House, but I might relate more with, some other show, maybe the Cosby Show or some other show that like more meets. Well, the Cosby Show didn't really because he was a doctor, but you find one of those shows that like Family Matters or something like that where you have, or even Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, where you got a kid from the hood coming and living with his rich family and not being able to relate. I think those particular shows have a place in our culture because they really spoke to other demographics in our culture. But for me, Full House was something I just definitely related to. So it was a shock, and then to hear John Stamos's words, and then you're watching people who really knew Bob Saget grieving publicly about it, and but I think John Stamos really just summed up. He did a brilliant, beautiful eulogy for Bob Saget. But yeah, so I thought like, we do on one end. I think you're right, Blake and Sal. Like I think a lot of the reason why this shocks us so much is these are the people we go to for our moral support, so to speak, even more than we would go to a church or we go to, sure, we go to the church, we do. But at the end of the day, when you're alone at night and you're having a bad time, who do you turn to?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you turn to these celebrities that have given you hope and made you feel good about yourself and affirmed who you were, even though all of that isn't real. It's kind of within us, right? Like we're affirming ourselves through the things we're watching. So it's a real psychological mess up there, but then that brings the other side of it, like these relationships that we think we have, and I'm not saying it's bad to have them. I find like listening to metal really soothes my soul because there's a war on, inside me a lot of the time, and metal helps me get that out, and so I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but in reality, as Christians, we know that Bob Saget's not going to save me from anything. Chris Cornell's not going to save me from anything. He couldn't save himself, like we turn to these things that make us feel better, but they're really just quick fixes. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be, grieving the loss of life. We should be, but it just makes me wonder, like how much we idolize these people, and that makes the shock when they do something crazy even worse, right? Like, oh, they did what? Bob Saget wouldn't do that. Well, Bob Saget never did, but you can pick your star that's going off the walls. Oh, they would never do that because you think you know them, but you don't know them. You know character. That's all you know.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that? Like that just is an interesting dynamic, I think.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Sal.
No, I think it just speaks to our need to, for self-care, disconnect and get out of reality. And they become part of that, not altered reality, but sort of that, that elevated reality where, well, that's my good space. They come from the good space. So to think negative things about someone, it's that disconnected, you want to be in that happy place as opposed to the reality of is they're just as needy of support and love as we are. And as Todd said, salvation.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. What were you gonna say, Blake?
This is a tough one for me. Is I kind of like I said earlier, I think we have gotten in the habit in the church of kind of discounting positives that come from outside of it, right?
I agree. Jesus can be working through these things and does, yes.
Yeah, and I think if we trust Jesus at His word, I would hope that it opens the world of consuming this stuff. Because there is truth in it. There is good that comes out of comedy and
absolutely,
and music and all of this other stuff.
There's biblical truth that comes out of it, even if it's not written by anybody who's ever read the Bible. I mean, it's just
right? The truth is the truth.
The truth is the truth. Yep.
How much, I can't remember what I was reading, but how much of the faith traditions that we have inherited are just as non-scriptural as a Soundgarden song.
Almost all of them. Right? I shouldn't say almost all of them, but a lot of them.
And so I don't know. This is I don't know quite what I think.
I feel with you, and here's how I'll hopefully help you see where I'm at it. I mean, if you read any of, and Sal knows this because he's had to edit them, sadly. If you read any of my devotions, almost all of them are referencing some sort of like pop cultural type thing that people relate to. I think it's an excellent tool as a Christian to teach biblical truths using things that people are familiar with, things that people relate to, connect with, and to not do that is foolish. Jesus did it all the time in his ministry. To not do that is foolish. So as a theologian, I have no problem with my connection to celebrity because I sit there at night and think, oh, well, what about God? Like I'm already having that dialogue with God, and I already see God in secular things. I already do. But most people, most people who are not as solid as I am in my faith, let's say, or maybe aren't religious at all. Maybe they're the nuns. I think it's my job as a theologian to direct people to help them to see God in all things. But when you don't see God in anything, then that's a different dynamic when you start and I'm not saying God isn't working through their lives through those things, even if they don't see it. God absolutely is. But it is a line of danger as well. Like, it's a good thing, but you can go too far with that, and some people do. So that's kind of like, that was the dynamic I was personally thinking on, not so much to make a secular versus Christian argument, because I think that's just stupid. I hate that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you do wonder, especially with people in the realm of celebrity, if they feel that pressure of people making more of their work than is appropriate.
Yeah. Oh, yes. The celebrities feel it just. Celebrities realize this probably more than I have, because they have to. I guess as a pastor and as a public theologian to some degree, yeah. I mean, like when I go out, like I'll say something from the pulpit, and people will take that and turn it into something I absolutely, like had no clue was being taken that way. And that's just on a small scale. So you can imagine what the frustration celebrities probably have. Like people thinking they know them, and you just know a character I played, and nothing more.
Right.
And they think they have access to them. Like, we can just interrupt your life, and we know you, man.
Well, there is that correlation to clergy, because we are, maybe on a much smaller scale, we are public figures as well. I mean, how many, and this ties into self-care, I mean, how many of our patients / congregants think that they own our time, or own our so just like young kids think, well, Bob Saget was my dad because he played this character. Us, to a much lesser degree, well, that's you're my pastor, and you have to make time for me. I don't care if you're on your day off and you're with your newborn child, you will make time for me. So on the flip side, that doesn't allow for self-care, because in a sense, the celebrity and we as clergy have been put on this pedestal of, yes, you're this beacon of morality, or just whatever, as a celebrity, and you work for us. So
yes, and self-care becomes very tricky when you're in the spotlight in any way, shape, or form, because you then have to become very intentional about taking that self-care time, and it's not always afforded to you even when you are. I mean, I just preached on Jesus leaving his disciples after a night of healing people in Capernaum and going off to pray with God alone. And of course, the New Living Translation, normally I like the way they translate things, but this one, it says, they went out looking for him, which is true, they did. But when you look at the other translations and you look at the word in Greek, it's not that they went looking for him. They went frantically looking for him. They were hunting him down, tracking him down. Where did he go? And Jesus had to say, like, dudes, no, this is my time. Like, and I'm not going to be here in Capernaum for the rest of my ministry. So you're going to have to get used to that and chill, But even Jesus had to be very intentional about self-care, because it's just not afforded to you when you're in the limelight. It's just not. Like, people demand your time. They don't care that you're hungry and want to rest. They need to be healed. And to be fair to them, they need to be healed. Like, you're crippled, you're blind, you've got your demon possessed. Especially demon possessed. I mean, those are things that like require a little urgency. They're not like oh, I stubbed my toe, heal me. Like they're big important things. So these people are really desperate, and Jesus has to somehow balance that compassionately with also taking time for himself, kind of stingily. And it's not stingily, because you need that. Like, that's something you need, but you feel stingy about it. I don't know, as clergy, I at least I do. Like, sometimes people will ask, can you do this? And I have to say no, and I feel bad. But I really shouldn't feel bad. Like, I can't do it. It's just as simple as that. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, I, like we said before things got rolling, and I told Sal this yesterday when it happened, I just divested myself from all of my presbytery responsibilities. And I was a chair of two different committees and a task force, and it was a lot. But that was part of why I had to do it. Is I was spending 20, sometimes 30 hours a month just on presbytery stuff.
Jeez,
That's like an entire week.
That's a week,
of my work.
Not counting your actual work. Yeah.
On top of that, and now we're switching. My wife has gone back to work today. She's working from home. That's where the baby went. I did not leave her somewhere. The baby is being cared for. But she goes back to work tomorrow. And so from now until she's done with the school year at the end of May, it's going to be me and the kid, because we're not putting her in daycare because it's obscenely expensive,
Right.
and because COVID, right? She's not vaccinated, and Omicron. So we're not doing it. So I was having kind of prolonged days long panic attacks about how is this ever going to work with all this other stuff I have to. Plus, I haven't heard about the last church, but 3 out of the 4 churches in our town voted to dissolve and become a new church. So we've got that going as well. And
dissolve from the denomination.
No, dissolve as congregations. They are going
and they merged.
And then come together as a new congregation in the PCUSA stuff. But that somebody decided that Pentecost would be a great day, even though it's 4 months from now. And so that's going to be a lot.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, I have to cut something, and for me, one of the things I've thought about with it is that we are kind of I've been feeling this snowball happening. Mm-hmm. Even before COVID started, but especially after COVID, this snowball of responsibility just picking up. More and more stuff is falling to me. More and more stuff is dependent entirely on me, which is not how I want to pastor. It's not how I intend to pastor. COVID just made it happen. And unspooling that snowball is almost impossible, because now people have gotten used to me dealing with everything. And so that's, I think, is another reason that making the choice to cut things out was really important.
Yes, I am right there with you, and I actually made a very similar decision. I stepped down from right at the pandemic. Once the pandemic hit, and then they were going to try to hold it again. It was in that pandemic period where I did a lot of reflecting, and I stepped down from leading search, stepped down from doing the Skylands District youth. I stepped, but here's what I didn't do, Blake, and maybe I should have. Maybe not. We'll see. But I did step down from those things with the understanding that I'd gain a little more responsibility in more community-related things. So, like, rather than serving the district this way, I'm now serving as vice president of my local Rotary Club, which gives me connections in the community. So I divested myself of some things that I really needed to divest myself of. I couldn't do it anymore. I just didn't have the heart or the passion or the energy for it. I always have the heart for it. I shouldn't say that, but I just didn't have the energy for it. Mm-hmm. And the idea that I really needed in this time to be focusing more on Newton and on the Newton community than on conference things far away that have bear no relevance to what I'm doing in Newton. And with the pandemic being so crippling on the church, I just felt like that's where my focus had to be. So I divested as well. And obviously, if I had had a young one to care for while working, I probably would not have picked up those other responsibilities. But yeah, you have to divest sometimes of things that you love to do. Again, your heart's there, but you just can't do it. You just can't do it.
Yeah. I didn't divest of any denominational responsibilities, but I did kind of divest of a job during the pandemic.
Which, by the way, was a major divestment.
Yes. When, much like you, Blake, I was committing, although I was paid for 40 hours a week, I was maybe spending 60, 70 hours a week dealing with this community, especially during the pandemic, because of my weekends were not my own. I was the only clergy responsible for 500 people's well-being, being called away from my newborn at the time. So
Sometimes for
I
not
was
good
able
reasons.
yeah, and for most of the time for not good reasons, like things
hey,
that
could
it
you
could have
turn
been
this
dealt with.
computer on? You know, like it's like
Yeah.
what?
I just drove an hour here. So I did, and hospice has given me a little more freedom to do that. And I have had to learn with hospice because I've had some weekend calls, but it hadn't been like, I'm in a separate state with my family. I cannot deal with this. And they've just had to be like, okay, it will be dealt with on Monday.
And you learn in those situations that when you stand up for yourself and just say no, people, unless you're a jerk and doing it all the time, people tend to understand. You know, especially people with a sense of a mature understanding of the things. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we're also at the point now with Calvin, who's almost 2 years old now. My committees with the presbytery, COM, Committee on Ministry, for example, of course, because they're basing it not on a chaplain's availability, they're basing it on clergy's availability, and most clergy do not have young children and are available at 7:00 on a Tuesday. So not divesting myself, I've come to the point where Calvin stays up later now. If I have a 2-year-old son that comes barging into the meeting and wants to be on daddy's lap and start hitting keys on the keyboard,
that's what's happening.
So be it. Presbytery can deal with it because you scheduled this meeting during a time when I normally would be winding down my son to put him to sleep. So
right.
I don't feel guilty for wanting to let my son come be with daddy while he's at a meeting.
And I imagine they're graceful about it. I would hope.
And they are. Yeah. Most people are just happy to see Calvin. So
they're just happy to see somebody under the age of 60.
Yeah, but that can put a lot of pressure on a parent because you don't know they're going to be graceful about it until you find out they are, and so it's like, well, you're self-conscious. You want to be as diligent of a member of COM or whatever as you can be, but you don't know how they're going to take a young baby screaming and crying and, and so that adds a lot of pressure to a parent. That's why a lot of parents don't come to church, actually. It's sad to say. They don't come to church because of the looks they get and not knowing how people are going to take their baby screaming through service. And sadly, the church has had a bad, track record on that. Yeah. And then wonders why kids don't show up.
Well, I think too about, so I'm in a job search right now. One of the churches is in a transitional period. And one of the things we'll talk about is like meetings have to happen at a time when the people you want making the decisions are available.
Yeah.
You can't just say, well, this person and that person, the people, the older generation, they can make the meetings. I was talking to someone who the interim, they had all of the meetings were at 11:00 in the morning. For the maps, for the mission studies, for all this stuff to make these decisions about who the next pastor was going to be. Who do you think came to those meetings? Right. So who do you think they ended up getting? Right. They got the person that generation wanted, and not the one that probably the church needed. And I think that's an important thing for the church to figure out is parents, I think now more than ever, are much more willing to put up really firm boundaries around their families.
Yes.
Say like, this isn't happening. If you aren't going to make an accommodation for us, we are just not going to be.
We're just not going to be here. Yeah.
Well, that's fine.
We're not going to be here.
But you're making a choice, and so will we.
Yep.
And so I think being respectful of that is really important. I've been thankful that the church has mostly been pretty cool during the COVID season. Something that was really hurtful that happened recently, though, was I put in for a month of parental leave, which starts next week. And they said, yeah, sure, but you have to preach 2 out of the 4 Sundays. So I'm not working.
But you're preaching.
But I'm preaching.
Because you have to work.
And part of the discussion when it came up at the congregational meeting was somebody said, well, he can do it on Saturday.
Why don't you come over on Saturday and sit with me for that and see if you change
your
mind?
What I wanted was to find out who that person was and say, okay, you're up.
You're up.
You only get Saturday and you're going to preach on Sunday. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's because they don't understand. And I'm not the type who's like, advertising how hard the job is, because in the grand scheme of things, our job is not that bad.
No, I mean, like,
far
it
worse
has
job.
its quirks like all jobs, right? Like our job is extremely tough in a way that other jobs are not, but then again, other jobs are extremely tough in a way that ours isn't. You know, like I may have a tough job in some ways, yes, but I also have the flexibility to move my schedule around the way others don't. So,
Right.
it has its pros and cons. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think, you know, one of the things that kept coming up during this discussion about the parental leave is like, it was people in my corner, so understandably it was very one-sided, of course. But this kind of repeated refrain of, so this is what they really think about people with young families. They want them, but they don't want to pay the price of it. Right? And I think that, again, you know, we're kind of going far afield, but I think that's a lesson the church needs to take heed of. You know,
Well,
we
it
say
does, and it all connects to self-care. It all
we
connects
want
to
the
care
next
in
generation
general.
involved, right? We want the next generation to know this good news that provides us an anchor in the storms of life and is one of the core sources of our self-care if it's being done right. But we're not willing to pay the price to get them involved.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
We want to keep what we want to keep, and they better like it, right? I am certain that my daughter is going to like music that I do not like. I am 100% sure of it. I'm doing my level best to make sure that she likes as much of the music that I enjoy as possible.
Give her the foundation; she'll expand, but that foundation will be there.
Side note: we have to do a Cobra Kai 4 episode at some point. I just finished it. I binged it over the last week.
Season 4 is freaking awesome,
phenomenal.
man.
Oh my
god!
God.
Cobra Kai season 4. I almost suggested that this time, but I was like, oh, let it settle a little bit, let people give time to see it. But we should talk about it. Yeah.
But
we should.
But what the spoiler alert on that episode that we will definitely have to talk about is the absolute dogged determination by the adults in the room to make their kids be them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And to make up for their mistakes.
And the fact that it's hurting everybody in the process by demanding a certain way of existence.
Yes.
And the kids demonstrated self-care by saying, no, this is what I need.
Yeah, they said no.
It's brilliant. It's just amazing. And so, it's just amazing. So
we will definitely talk about Cobra Kai in an episode. I'm mindful of our time and that we have we have to go see our patrons on the other end of this. So those of you who are not patrons, you should be. Hello. But before I move us forward to that, I'm noticing that both Sal and I have we're wing-headed. Did you notice that, Blake? Sal's overcompensating for my wings.
What I see is a weeping angel behind Todd. So don't blink. Don't even blink. Doctor Who reference for anybody interested. And then Sal, it looks like you have. I'm not sure what that is.
That's gonna take you high, though. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Well, it's my embodiment. It's my embodiment of the angel of death. So.
Amen. There you are. There you are. There you are. And mine is much more rocking, like you're at a Manson concert or something. Yours is much more like you are the angel of death. Yes, I have to agree. Yeah. Cool. Well, friends, this has been a great time, a great discussion, really, really great discussion. And so check out the episode notes. Of course, our favorite drinks and whatnot will be in there. But remember, guys, and this is very important, be excellent to each other.
Don't be a jerk.
And take care of yourself.
Amen.
Cool.